Let's talk some chess. This game comes from Paul Morphy, a giant in chess history. It was played in 1857 in New York, New York. His opponent is John William Schulten with the white pieces. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a picture of Mr. Schulten, but he kicks us off with e4. Morphy plays e5, and now we have f4, so immediately the king's gambit by Schulten, giving away a pawn on f4. And Morphy ignores it. Morphy, never materialistic, cares about development and pushing in the center instead of gaining material, plays d5, which is the Falkbeer counter gambit. So the idea here is now white can take the pawn on e5, which is undefended. You could take the pawn on d5, which the queen technically defends, but a lot of options here with the white pieces. And here Schulten goes for e captures on d5. And it looks like you can just take back with the queen, but this actually leads to a better position for white. After knight to c3, which attacks the queen has to retreat, and now you have a couple options with the white pieces, but you have a minor piece out. You can sort of develop your pieces while attacking this queen. Well, I think the engine wants you to play queen to e2 in this position, which prevents the pawn from capturing on f4 because now the pawn is pinned. But that's neither here nor there. Just giving you a sense of why Morphy does not capture back with the queen. Instead, he plays e4, which is the typical idea in the Falkbeer counter gambit. So we have knight to c3 attacking this pawn, and knight to f6 defending, so the pawn cannot be taken, and now d3, trying another way to get rid of this pawn on e4. But this allows Morphy to play bishop to b4, which pins the knight to the king, so now you want to deal with this somehow, and Schulten does with bishop to d2, blocking the pin of the dark-squared bishop with the other dark-squared bishop. But here this allows e3 by Morphy sort of forcing this bishop away from the defense of the knight. You pretty much have to capture this pawn. You don't want to retreat the bishop and allow this pawn just to hang out on the third rank so deep in the position. So here bishop captures, and now Morphy just castles his king to safety. And now we have a sort of typical mistake by Morphy opponents. When I say typical, this game took place a long time ago, before a lot of sort of modern techniques and strategies have been developed. And here the proper move is just to develop the other bishop to e2, and sort of play on from there. This allows Morphy to break up the pawn structure with bishop takes on c3, but after pawn takes on c3, this is actually totally fine for white. You have sort of a busted pawn structure on the queen side, but you can work on developing your knight, castling king side, and this is okay. But Schulten was afraid of this. He was afraid of messing up his pawn structure. He was playing the amazing Morphy and wants to keep these pawns really intact, so instead he plays bishop to d2. But this is a retreat that loses a tempo, and Morphy takes advantage with rook to e8. And this comes with a check. And again, this move wouldn't be possible if the dark square bishop just stayed on e3, because then you're obviously blocking the e file. Indeed, if you put the light square bishop on e2, then you're blocking the e file twice. So this rook move doesn't come with as threatening a tempo. But anyways, that's, again, neither here nor there. We have bishop to d2, and now Morphy gets the rook to e8 move in. And here Schulten blocks with the bishop, the light squared bishop on e2. Now we have a couple of trades. Bishop takes on c3, and here pawn takes on c3. So opening up maybe this file for the rook, opening up the b file. But this doesn't look very good. This doesn't look like sorry, I don't know why my mouse is being weird. This doesn't look like a very good pawn structure. Your king is still in the center of the board, and already this is not looking very fun for Mr. Schulten. So Morphy immediately plays bishop to g4. Attacking this bishop on e2. Of course, the bishop is pinned from the rook, so Morphy espouses one of the important principles in chess, which is attack pinned pieces, because they obviously cannot move. And the bishop is defended properly from the queen and the knight and the king, but just a nice developing move by Morphy to get this piece out and even pin it in another way. So now the bishop can't move on this diagonal, because then Morphy's bishop would pick up the queen. So just even adding another pin to this position. And here Schulten actually makes the sort of the losing move. This is a difficult position to defend, but you can defend it. And the proper way to defend it is by moving the king to f2. This breaks the pin of the rook on the bishop and allows for some nice maneuvering to get back sort of into the game. So here Morphy would take, probably, if we assume he would play Stockfish's moves, he would take on e2, knight takes on e2, and now queen takes on d5, capturing this pawn. Then we have rook to e1, bolstering this e file, and after knight to c6, king retreats to f1, and now you can envision the king getting pretty safe, and these pieces are doing a decent job defending, and everything is okay. There's no crazy attack. There's actually a slight advantage in that position for white. But instead, white plays kind of the losing move, or wait, maybe this isn't the losing move yet. Let me look at my notes. Okay, not the losing move yet. First, white plays c4, which adds some protection to this d5 pawn, not allowing the knight and the queen to take the pawn. Again, it's better to get the king safe to f2 and break the pin, but this is not a losing move just yet. But stay tuned, because the losing move will follow. Here, Morphy plays c6, and now this is sort of where Schulten makes the losing move. Here, again, you can get the king safe, but the best move here is actually playing h3, which obviously attacks this light-squared bishop. The bishop now has to make a decision. It can't hang out on f3. It can go to h5, but then you're even risking g4. Actually, it can't go to h5 because then g4, and then bishop retreats, and then f5, and the bishop is trapped. So sort of forcing the bishop to capture, which it would on e2, and then knight captures on e2. Pawn takes on d5, c takes on d5, queen to e7, setting up a battery on the e file, but now d6, sort of deflecting the queen away. Queen to e6, and now king escapes to f2. And again, this is totally fine. Very similar to what we saw before, where the king can artificially castle, the rook can come to the e file, and all as well. But this, of course, is not what happened. So just remember that this h3 move was the key move. Instead, white plays a very innocent-looking move, but a move that just instantly has the position fall apart, and that is d takes on c6. And the problem with this move is it allows knight takes on c6, allowing this knight to get into the game, and very soon this knight will join in on the attack and make the position untenable for Schulten. So you can't let this knight get to c6, and you can't let this bishop stay on g4, and unfortunately capturing the pawn allows Morphy to do both of those things. So anyways, knight takes on c6, and now finally we have the king moving to f1, breaking the pin of the bishop, but it is too late. Because Morphy here jumps into the attack with rook takes on e2, an exchange sacrifice, giving up the rook for the bishop, but now just breaking open Schulten's defenses. So here you have to sort of capture back. You don't want to be down a bishop, and the knight takes on e2. But now, just like before, this knight is pinned. And it's not pinned to the king. It's pinned from the bishop to the queen, so the knight can't move lest the bishop pick up the queen, which is going to be a problem. And now we get the idea behind this knight to c6 move, knight to d4. And this was why you couldn't allow this knight to get into the game, because knight to d4 is just a really, really powerful move that now adds an attacker to this hapless knight on e2, which is pinned to the queen. So now this knight is attacked twice. You can envision the queen or even rook coming over to join in on the attack, and it's unclear how you're going to defend this knight a third time, and this position is very quickly going to turn into trouble for Schulten. So here we have queen to b1, which is kind of a funny looking move. Basically, you can't break the pin by moving the knight. You can break the pin by moving the queen. So his idea here was to get away from this pin and maybe get some counterplay going. Now, the knight can be captured, and well, we'll get to that. The proper move here is actually rook to b1, kind of ignoring the threat for now and threatening, again, counterplay along the b file, capturing the pawn, and then maybe getting an attack going. Here you would get, you'd have to give up your queen. You get bishop captures on e2, forking the king and the queen, a royal fork. Queen takes, knight takes, and then, maybe king takes back. And this is much better for Morphy because Morphy has a queen on the board. So Schulten obviously saw this, and instead of playing, rook to b1, he tried to save the queen and plays queen to b1. But now Morphy just has an amazing attack to launch, essentially. So he plays bishop to e2 with check. The knight is protecting the bishop, and the bishop is checking the king, and here the king just moves to f2. There's a really beautiful line if the king moves to g1, which to me looks like the best move. You're getting the king the safest, but maybe Schulten wants to get his rook back into the game into the game, not back into the game. It never was in the game. Maybe he wants to get his rook into the game by moving the king to f2. But if you move the king to g1, you actually get a very nice combination here. First, it starts with knight to captures on c2. And this looks like a blatant knight sacrifice for no reason, but it's actually not. The whole reason behind this move is to evacuate the the d4 square. So if you accept the sacrifice, then you get queen to d4, evacuate the d4 square, and now this is going to lead to checkmate in just a couple moves. After the bishop blocks, queen takes bishop, and all these squares are taken by the queen and the bishop, and that's checkmate. So a pretty neat little knight sacrifice on c2. The proper way to defend here is queen takes on c2, and then you get the same idea. Queen to d4 check. Actually, no. Did I even do what the other line was? I don't think I did. Let me see. Yeah, the best move here is just to play h3 and give an escape square for the king. So now this queen to d4 check doesn't lead to mate, but then you get queen to d3, and now you can just see queen captures pawn on d3, and now you can just see these pieces are super active. Morphy, I think, is up material, and this king is not very safe, and so that's not going to work. But I wanted to show you this knight sacrifice on c2 because I think it's a fun line. But that didn't happen in the game. Instead of running the king to g1, we had king to f2 by Schulten. And now, is this the move I wanted to ask about? No, not yet. Now we get the other knight jumping into the attack with knight to g4 check. And now you can see the knight's checking the king. The other knight is blocking f3, which is also blocked by the bishop. The bishop is preventing a retreat to f1, and things are starting to get hairy for this king. So here, now Schulten does decide to retreat the king to g1, and here plays king to g1, trying to get safe on the first rank. And it looks like this attack may have sort of slowed down. You might be thinking about the same idea of knight takes on c2 and then getting the queen to d4, but that's not what Morphy played. And see if you can find Morphy's move here, which leads to the best combination while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay, so we talked about a theoretical knight sacrifice. Here's a knight sacrifice that happened in reality. It is knight to f3 with check. Just an amazing move. The king has nowhere to go because the knight is checking the king. The bishop's taking away f1. The other knight's taking away f2. But this is a sacrifice, right? The pawn can easily take the knight, and that's, in this case, what you have to do. So pawn takes knight, but now the defenses of the king are shattered. There are no, there's no real pawn defense, no real pawn fortress. And this allows Morphy to get right into it with queen to d4 check. So that's the other idea behind this knight moving to f3 is, again, we saw this idea in the other line. You evacuate d4, which allows the queen to join in. So pawn takes, this achieves two things. Pawn takes, which disrupts the defenses, and the d4 square is now open for the queen to check the king. The king has one move, unless you want to block with the bishop and give up the bishop. You have king to g2 here, but now queen to f2, and you can just see this king is being forced up the board and eventually into checkmate. The knight is protecting the queen, and the king only has one move, which is h3, and now queen to f3 check, and the squares are running out for the white king. Marches up to h4, and again, Schulten was trying so hard to keep his king on the first rank, but now it's already on the fourth rank and moving up even further. Here Morphy has a really nice sidestep move. He plays knight to h6, which I guess I should have taken a second to find this move. But this is an awesome move because it doesn't, it's not a discovery. It doesn't seem like it's achieving anything. But again, this is all about sort of a big theme in this game is vacating squares, especially vacating squares that are sort of controlled by knights. So here, this g4 square is super important. The knight moves away, and this allows the threat of queen to g4 checkmate because both the knight and the bishop are guarding g4. So this obviously comes here with checkmate. So it's a threat you cannot ignore, and Schulten doesn't ignore it. He plays queen to g1, protecting this g4 square from checkmate. But now, the knight delivers almost a final check with knight to f5 check, checking the white king. And again, the king has basically no options. The queen and knight are taking away all those squares. So we get king to g5. And again, a king on the fifth rank is never good. And Morphy finishes the game very nicely with queen to h5. And this is finally checkmate. The bishop is protecting the queen, which is checking the king and taking away these squares. The knight is actually not doing anything at the moment, although it, is obviously very helpful in delivering this, this attack. The pawn is blocking off the f4 square, and of course Morphy's pawn on g7 is protecting the f6 square. So the king has nowhere to run, and the game is over. So yeah, an awesome game. A couple of good night vacations, as they were, which is kind of funny. But yeah, just a great example of how Morphy doesn't care so much about material. He wants to develop his pieces, get an attack going, and just break down the enemy fortress and sort of break down these pawns and get the king all the way out to the 5th rank, where it's much easier to deliver checkmate. So thank you very much for watching. Drop a like, drop a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.